present the meta papers in the 6 target countries we had in this project. Yeah, maybe very briefly to my person. So I'm Nicola, I'm the head of our retail investing research program. So the program which is also responsible for those papers. And together with me, there's Anais here from Better Finance, who is a partner in a project which is funding or which funded those papers and our research there, which is called the Level EEI, so Level the Playing Field for Energy Efficiency Investments and Sustainable Energy Investments, funded by the European Commission H2020 project. I will also maybe come back to this, the relevance for this particular subject later. Okay, let's start. I try here to share my screen and then we can start. Okay. Anais, please tell me if you would not see the screen, but I assume that this works.
It's all right. It's all good.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah. The presentation will be aligned with the structure in the paper. So basically, I will present our key findings in terms of the research we did on the demand side of sustainable finance products across the target countries, the supply side and the distribution side. And also finish with some recommendations we have from a tool perspective. That's not included in the paper. That's what I added myself, but also the policy or industry implications we would recommend to improve the situation of the sustainable retail investing market in Europe. Let's start with the demand side. Before I start, maybe also just to let you know regarding questions, I will try to be as quick as possible, but I think that I will need like around 30 to 40 minutes for this presentation. And we will have time after this for a discussion. So I would be very interested in your questions, potential ideas for improvements, and maybe also inspirations for new research questions. But for this, we will have time at the end. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat and put in your questions alongside the presentation there. Okay, let's start with the findings on the demand for sustainable finance products. So first, presentation of the materials. So what we did over the last 2 years is to conduct quantitative surveys in the countries mentioned, but beyond. Today we will focus on the demand side on target countries. So these were Belgium, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, Poland, and Sweden. Our quantitative surveys covered 1,000 people per country. And together with the polling agency, we selected 2 criteria, which are minimum savings and financial wealth and representativeness in terms of gender and age in those countries. Beside of this, we also conducted a qualitative research in those countries together with partner organizations, which we hired in all of those countries. And together with our partners, we conducted interviews and focus groups. So we interviewed a bunch of people and conducted also group discussions, which of course cannot be representative, but which sometimes helped us to better interpret our results and also put in light maybe issues or limitations of the results, and also actually which were pretty valuable sources of inspiration from new research questions. To start with, so first, what's interesting, what we saw in our results is that there's a pretty large interest in sustainable finance, stated interest, but that's also aligned with research results from other academic research, which is in general showing that between 50 and 80% of people in Europe claim to be interested in sustainable finance products. And in our sample, we had over 50% of respondents in average declared an interest in sustainable finance products, but in average 30% of respondents only said that they are already invested in such products. We asked, you will see in another slide and another question also, to which extent they were invested. So that is an information we don't have here, but it's assumable, as you will see later, that also those 30% of respondents are only investing a very small share of their current savings in those kind of products. This is also reflected in our qualitative from our qualitative research, where we saw that people are indeed very interested in the topic to use their savings to support the sustainable transformation in general, but maybe also just to reflect their values, and that they would be interested in receiving more materials to better understand the topic. Which also mirrors the self-reported very low level of knowledge on the topic at the moment. A question which we also ask in all our surveys, so the surveys we conducted already in 2021, but also those 2022, so that's also what I said earlier, that we are actually conducting this kind of research in much more countries, is at the very beginning of the sustainability part of the questionnaire, we asked the respondents, what is your actual motivation to invest sustainably? And that's a really key question in our opinion, because first it clarifies, well, the actual motivation why a client wants to invest sustainably. But it also then reveals which actual products are most suitable. As you will see later in the results of our research on distribution practices, this is indeed one of the major issues we identified, because many people want to have an impact, as we can see here. One of the, so there are three core profiles, or three motivations. One is to have an impact with your savings. That's one. Second is to align your values with your investments. So to say that you are either excluded from certain activities you just want to avoid due to moral reasons, or activities where you want to signal your support. So just to say, I want to be related to green companies, but I don't really expect that I have any impact on them. And the third profile is, well, return oriented, so that is not per se a sustainability objective. And then, of course, you can have mixed objectives, as you can see here in the table. However, to come back to this, to the relevance to ask this question when you talk to any person actually about sustainability, I would recommend is that given that in the distribution process this is not done, 50% of people are actually interested in having an impact with their savings, while this is completely lacking in the distribution process. But I will explain, or I will get into the details a little bit on this later. We also asked, after assessing the sustainability objectives of the respondents, how those, or whether those sustainability objectives might vary across financial goals. So is there maybe a difference between the savings for retirement to savings which you want to use for short-term income growth? Maybe because you are more risk taking for income generation compared to savings for your grandchildren. However, we found pretty stable sustainability objectives across financial goals. And we also asked if the respondents had more than one sustainability objective, how they would prioritize. And here we saw that most respondents had return as their primary objective, which is not a big surprise because it is still a financial investment. And also it's not surprising that the largest amount people wanted to save is for the retirement. And for the retirement, we have normally a return expectation and also a pretty low risk expectation. And second, but that was pretty close, was value, and third priority in average impact. If you have questions to the slides, we can also discuss it later. Another finding then related to the previous slide is that we indeed found a significant so-called attitude behavior gap to finance the green transition. So that's also this relation to this level EEI focus. So the question to what extent retail investors are actually interested to invest in so-called energy efficiency investments and sustainable energy investments. And here we asked also the same question, basically, are you interested in those products? Would you like to contribute? And then are you already invested? And if people said that they are already invested, then we ask, well, to what share are you already invested in different green financial products? And green financial products might be green saving accounts, might be low carbon funds, thematic green funds, green bond funds, for instance. And here we saw that indeed that only 5% or even below 5% stated to have more than 10% of their savings currently invested in such green financial products. So we see this attitude behavior gap in average in our results between like those 47% of people who would like to contribute, finance the energy transition, to 23% who already own financial products. But then keep in mind, those 23% are only invested at the moment to a very small extent in those products, which shows that there's on the one hand a big market potential actually still for those kind of products, but also a significant attitude behavior gap, meaning that people would like to do something, but it's not reflected in their actual in the actions. And then we wanted to understand, why is this the case? So we identified several blockers which are preventing those people to finance the green energy transition. Because indeed, we asked all participants whether they would be interested to switch from conventional shares of their savings to green investments, and 60% stated that they're indeed interested in switch. However, there are various blockers which prevent them from doing so. And I would like to highlight 3 blockers. So the first one is the lack of time and expertise on the topic. So that is indeed something which we also saw in our qualitative interviews and focus groups, that people are interested, but given their low level of understanding, their low sustainable finance literacy, they are also very skeptical about the topic. So a lack of time and expertise. And then second, also the lack of trust in those financial products. And then what you see here in the middle, what I found interesting, is also that people who are actually interested are often still believing that an investment of those products is directly related to a decrease of financial performance, which might be true in some cases, but not necessarily. And the fourth, to highlight also a fourth reason, is a lack of time. So basically, we have too high transaction costs to get the relevant information in order to feel prepared to do those investments. So let's move from some of the key findings. Of course, I could continue for ages to talk about the findings of the demand side, but let's move now, given the time, also to now the interlinkage between demand and supply and the mismatch of those. Here again, findings from the target countries, but also the findings we had in France, where we published later last year, at the end of last year, a similar meta report about our findings in France. And here, what we see is a significant mismatch of what we just saw previously compared to what we could find on the supply side in one of the mainstream largest databases for financial products, which was in our case the LIPA Refinitiv database, which is of course also not fully comprehensive. So there might be still products which are outside of those databases and still available for retail clients. But I think they are already a pretty good proxy to give a picture of what mainstream distributors have access to. And we saw by comparing the LIPA database and the flags they provide there in terms of thematic funds, funds which are applying exclusions, SDG focus, and also some other flags. We matched those flags to the different sustainability profiles, which we which we saw previously in this table. And then we compared those two. And we see that there's a significant oversupply of financial products without any sustainability objective. So that is the bar which we see here on the left. So between 75% of the market, of the fund market, we could select in those target countries, compared to 25% of actual profiles we found in those countries, who are not at all interested in sustainable finance products. So there's on the one hand a pretty large mismatch between supply and demand, and also regarding value-aligned products or pure value-aligned products in particular. Here we see that actually the market is currently oversupplying in this regard. And what does this mean? This means that also what we see, right, that most products, Article 8 and Article 9 products, are actually value-aligned products because they are applying thematic screenings. So they might maybe exclude certain sustainability topics. They might focus on certain sustainability topics. However, this is more suited for value-aligned clients and not, for instance, for impact-oriented investors. So we see also here a pretty huge misalignment between those objectives. And then, last but not least, a huge undersupply of financial products with substantiated impact focus, what we see on the right side of this graphic here. And here, the only products which we could find in this LIPA database, which would be suitable for those clients, were microfinance funds. So these are those 0.2% of supply which we flagged here. And then for the other profiles, we put NA because we also said, well, there might be products, but they are not included in a database. So we did in a parallel project, not particularly for this purpose, but in a parallel project, we are currently conducting a market review where we try to understand which products are actually available for impact-oriented investors in different European countries. Based on a new framework which we developed to assess the impact potential of financial products. I will also mention this later again. And here, indeed, it actually echoes our assumptions that we only find a handful of products in most countries which would be currently recommendable for impact-oriented investors. So our assumption that there is a huge market gap is, I think, correct when we talk about especially pure impact-oriented investors. Now, there's, of course, one strategy which is interested and where only, well, anecdotal research can be used to assess whether there is a market gap or not, and this is engagement. So as we know, investor stewardship can be one strategy which might be useful also for impact-oriented investors who have a certain return expectation and also maybe who want to align with their values. So this mixed profile actually of 39% of clients, so actually the largest profile category we found in our results, so on the right side of this graph. However, if we look at research on the credibility of stewardship of the largest asset managers in the world, so we have research from organizations like Influence Map or Shared Action. If you're interested on this research, I also can tell you the respective papers later. But those research clearly revealed that only a small share of asset managers are actually applying credible and effective stewardship strategies so that we could recommend maybe those products for impact-oriented clients. So these are, of course, only covering the largest asset managers worldwide. But if you look at the fund products they distribute in the target countries, it's around almost 50%. So it's actually giving us already, I think, a pretty decent picture that also here, if we look at engagement as a strategy, that also here we have a significant mismatch between the demand and supply. And a little excursus also and exclusion topics, because as we have seen earlier, exclusion or value alignment, and exclusion is one of the strategies which is most suitable for those client profiles. We see also when we dig into exclusion that we have a mismatch when we compare what is important for clients to what are actually funds doing in the market. So we did this research in particular in France and then in previous surveys we did in the last years. And I want to show this example in France, where you can see that we have some topics which were clearly the most important, like certain social topics actually to be excluded from the funds. Or from potential funds the respondents would like to invest in. And we see that there is a significant mismatch, because when we compare, for instance, the interest in exclude any companies which are related to serious violation of the UN Global Compact, so this is the information which you see here, it's around 40 45% of the respondents. And we compare this with the data we find in the French retail fund market, then there's a gap of almost 40% because 82% of the funds we found in our database in France were flagged under the UN Global Serious Violation flag from ISS ESG. And this is based on the industry standard thresholds, which they provide to us. So that is a pretty significant gap, which also puts into question to which extent actually currently Article 9 products are also actually complying with this UN Global Compact violation. Indeed, we did actually this exercise already, and we found that over 90% of Article 9 products are flagged under the ISS ESG violation flag, which is in particular very problematic for Article 9 funds, which are using the taxonomy because under the taxonomy we know that the minimum safeguard concept requires an exclusion of any serious violation of this standard. Let's get to the next topic, which is the distribution side and the deficiency we see currently in the distribution of the supply of sustainable finance products in the countries in our scope. Here, we merged the results we had from all our mystery shopping visits we conducted over the last years. So as you can see, we have here slightly also other countries in scope. So we have Italy, Spain, Netherlands from our current or from our previous results, but we added also the results we found in Denmark, Estonia, Germany, Greece, Ireland, and Romania. And what we found here is that in average, there is still a pretty low level of regulatory compliance. So in over or in 57% of the mystery shopping visits we conducted in those 9 countries, the financial advisors did not automatically assess the sustainability preferences of their clients. So the 48% there is wrong. I think it's from a previous presentation, which is problematic because, as we know, since August last year, all advisors are supposed to assess the sustainability preference of their clients. What's worth to mention is that there's a high variability between countries. So while in Germany there were around 75% of advisors who assessed sustainability preferences automatically, there were only 25% in Ireland, for instance. So we see also a high variability, also compared to our mystery shopping visits we did ex ante from the MiFID II enforcement, which also shows that issues in the financial advice practices across countries remain. Another finding was that the processes are not followed, which are foreseen in MiFID. In particular, for instance, the assessment of the minimum proportion to be invested in accordance with sustainability preferences. So here we found that in 49% of cases, the minimum proportion was not assessed. Furthermore, and very concerningly, we also found that in 30% of cases, the advisors did not take any record of the meeting. So that is, that is concerning because, as we all know, the record keeping is on the one hand legal requirement, and on the other hand, it's also important as a protection for the client. So without better compliance with these procedural processes, it's also likely that we can create actually an incentive structure with the regulation if the regulation is actually just not respected. Furthermore, and this is where I come back to what I said earlier, we see a high risk of misadvice to impact-oriented clients in particular. So if we ask the advisor how they or what impact investing is and whether we can or whether a client can invest there, we saw a very insufficient level of knowledge on the subject with the broadest confusion between company impact and investor impact. So again, investing in a green fund, which is investing in maybe low carbon companies or maybe taxonomy aligned companies with a certain taxonomy revenue share, let's say, is not investor impact, it's company impact. So it does not mean that the client, by investing 1,000 euro in this fund, will have a real world impact with his or her savings. And this distinction is key, as we all know, and needs also to be clearly explained to the client. And in fact, if we did then some case studies by going in depth into particular recommendations for our impact client profile we had in the mystery shopping visits, then we saw that the financial products which were recommended were definitely not matching the expectations of impact-oriented investors. So one of our key conclusions from the demand to supply and distribution research we did is that impact-oriented investors, remember, representing 50% of the people in our sample, to different extent, from pure impact-focused people to people who have a mixed profile, however, with an impact objective, to the supply, which is probably close to between 0 and 1%, if we want to be very, very, very optimistic, to the distribution, where impact-oriented investors are actually misadvised. And this is not a huge surprise, because also in the regulation, the concept of investor impact is not yet integrated. However, we expect that this will be improved in the future revision of SFDR and other files, because we already see that the Commission acknowledged the high risk of actually misadvising and misallocating financial products to impact-oriented retail, but also professional investors, as we have seen in the market report from the ESAs on greenwashing, where impact washing was mentioned as one of the high-risk factors we can observe in the market. So what we would recommend, so what we do as 2 Degrees Investing Initiative with our partners is not only conducting research on those different subjects around retail investing, but it's also developing practical solutions, so supportive materials for industry participants to step up and to actually grasp also this market potential, which is there, but which is currently actually not exploited. And here I can recommend a practitioner guide for asset managers and asset owners to assess the sustainability preferences of their beneficiaries. Because as we saw earlier in the results on the supply side, it is indeed questionable to what extent today product manufacturers are actually including research on beneficiary or client preferences in the design of the sustainability characteristics of financial products. according to my feedback and discussions I had in the market so far, I assume that this is very low, and it might be a pretty significant competitive advantage to do so. And that's the reason why we developed together with Masters University a practitioner guide to assess clients' preferences. And to mention also that here we work closely together with Masters University, which is one of the leading organizations on the research on sustainable preferences in different institutional settings, with Rob Bauer as the leading researcher on the topic. They have done several experiments with pension funds, index funds, mutual funds over the last years, and in this guide we summarize those methodologies. So worth a read if this is relevant for you. This will be published next Tuesday, so that's not out yet, but it will be published next Tuesday. Second, if you are interested in actually understanding the impact potential of either the financial products you are developing or you want to distribute, we developed over a 2-year process a new framework, which is called the Impact Potential Assessment Framework. IPAF is a new acronym to add to the acronym library of sustainable finance. And this IPAF framework we now applied in 6 European countries, and to, as I mentioned earlier, understand which products could be actually recommendable for impact-oriented investors. And there are some, however, still to a limited extent. And we will publish those results also at the beginning of October. So stay tuned if you are interested in this. We'll publish it in a free, publicly accessible database. So you can check out this if it's relevant for you. We also developed with several stakeholders, with like PRI, WWF, but also the European Association for Advertisement, a guide on environmental impact claims. So this might be also relevant for you because impact washing, as I mentioned earlier, is a high-risk factor. Legally, according to our and our partners' assessment, something which is very underestimated at the moment from market participants in terms of legal consequences if there would be a law case against misleading environmental impact claims, which are in brackets 20%, 25% of all environmental impact claims we identified in a market research we published 2 weeks ago. So if you're interested in this, you can also go to our website and find our market research on this topic. And last but not least, a questionnaire I would like to recommend. This was also a process of over 3 years where we worked with several organizations, industry, regulator to come up with a new best practice questionnaire for assessing client sustainability preferences and motivations aligned with the MiFID II requirements, but going beyond, including those sustainability objectives I mentioned earlier in my presentation. That is something we will publish actually tomorrow, so stay tuned. The policy recommendations, to just run through this because I see we are already at 47, where that on the one hand we urge repetitively that there needs to be a review of the regulatory compliance with the sustainability assessment processes, as we have shown in our results, which are only complied to a very low extent. And without the compliance, the regulation doesn't make sense. Second, that we need to have a comprehensive assessment of the SFDR, which we have now, but with one core objective that the concept of investor impact needs to be integrated in order to accommodate impact-oriented investors in future. Third, that in the retail investment strategy and the objective that financial advisors need to have better knowledge and competence on sustainable finance, that we need to have high standards there, in particular on impact investing, or how to accommodate impact oriented investors. And fourth and fifth, that we should open up to potential alternative funds for retail clients. So there's an emerging market for private equity venture capital impact funds for retail investors. So there are more and more innovative, very, very interesting new products coming to the market, but still only representing a very, very small market share. And we believe that there's still room for increase and improvement. And this needs also to go along with regulatory amendments, because one learning, to mention this, from our impact market analysis, is that we also have a lack of information to assess the actual impact potential of many products. So if this would be required in future, then it would be also much easier to assess, maybe even automatically, the impact potential of financial products in future. And last but not least, also a launch of sustainable products which enable an exposure to small and local investments. That could be, for instance, which we also see emerging in the market, pooled fund products of project finance in your country. We saw in our data that indeed there's an appetite from retail investors to invest in more small and local projects, and we see that there's a huge potential also there. Okay. Thank you for your attention. It was now a few minutes longer than I planned, but I still hope insightful for you. So let's now open the floor for any potential comments and questions. And again, if you have any further questions beyond of this presentation, feel free to contact me so that we can maybe catch up in a bilateral call or in a discussion. Okay, so
you have questions, Nicola?
Okay. All right. The first question is, how did we define value and impact when presenting those concepts to people? So that is indeed a good question, because we understood in our interviews we conducted earlier that people need to understand those concepts in a more easy, or in an easy language. That is in my opinion, also the beauty of this concept of asking questions at the very beginning. If you talk to a person, what is your motivation, value, impact, maybe ESG integration, but that's questionable whether this is actually a sustainability objective. And we developed a video for breaking this down in an easy concept. So in each survey, you have a video which you must watch, with also translations in the respective languages, which explains those concepts in simple words. And by the way, this is the concept of using this kind of holistic approach to use value and impact as sustainability objectives. Is not invented by us, but it's actually used already by different stakeholders, from researchers to market participants like Eurosif. We see also other market participants like huge players like Natixis, or the Swiss Asset Management Association, using this framework, and even regulators like FCA, also the ESAs already referred to those concepts. So it's not something we invented, but we used we used a lot, and also kind of, I would say, improved over the last years. There's a second question. Do you agree that some of the confusion also comes from the European Commission, who keeps stressing the need to mobilize private capital to finance the transition, whereas the vast majority of investment funds do not finance anything, given that all the trading is done on the secondary market? At best, the impact is indirect and longer term via engagement activities of the asset managers, if any. So that's a very good comment, and fully agree. We fully agree. So that is something we urge, I think, for more than 4 years, and we see movement now to and also we keep stressing this particular fact in our work, which we are doing currently in the sustainable finance platform, where we are also involved from the Commission, by saying that the current framework, it is focused mostly on secondary market products, which is misaligned with the explicit objective of the Sustainable Finance Action Plan to finance the transition, to use private capital to finance the transition, while most products where the vast majority of capital flows, sustainable capital flows, are going to, are secondary market products, which, based on research, have very low evidence to actually serve this primary objective of the Commission. So that is a key thing we stress for years. And we see movements, but slow. At least in the platform, for instance, there is, I would not say consent, because we still hear here and there, for instance, that, well, we see a huge taxonomy premium, so it shows that indeed it works, but it is still like a premium of, let's say, 6 basis points. It's something, it's not sufficient to be convincible for companies on the ground to change their investment behaviors in a scale which would be required. So more and more people acknowledge that, yeah, indeed, we need to focus on primary market products. So that is where the music plays, in the primary market. And on the secondary market, engagement activities is still a huge thing. And for engagement, we need standards. You know, at the moment, engagement is piece of the framework. If we look at the MiFID preferences, for instance, where you have the option as a client to say that you want to address principal adverse indicators by using engagement. However, there's no standard which would say that a certain engagement is now good engagement or bad engagement, or, you know, credible engagement or whatever. So this is needed, that this data point makes sense in future. We also see movement there, that there's a lot of movement in this regard as well. The next question is, how do you reconcile the MiFID II ESG preference requirements with the need to find out the motivations of the retail investor? So the MiFID ESG preference requirements, what do you want to the motivations? Why do you want it? Very well, I think, yeah, very well understood. So you can check how we did this matching exercise and how we recommend a questionnaire, a suitability questionnaire, which accommodate both. So the question about motivations to the questions about the preferences, so rather the what. We spent, I can tell you, like a lot of time on finding a way how to accommodate those two. I cannot explain this now in 2 minutes, but we will publish this paper next Tuesday with pretty comprehensive guidance, with annexes where we also give recommendations how you can accommodate impact-oriented investors in particular. So I would really recommend, if you're interested in this question, to check our newsletter and to check what we did there. And we are very happy if you have comments, questions on this, to get back to us. Yes, there's another comment that it was a good presentation. Thank you. I feared a little bit that it would be too much information for 40 minutes. Probably it was, but I hope I could make myself clear at least on some points. Can you explain the difference between investor and company impact? If an investor wants to have an impact, does it mean he should invest in a product that has an investor impact and not a company impact? So an investor with a impact objective might have, so that's a good question. There are two profiles. We are also asking for this. So let's imagine there's an investor who wants to have an impact, but also who has the objective to align with his or her values. Let's take an imaginary example. You are a green voter and you just say that whatsoever you don't want to invest in companies related to coal assets. So this investor could invest in companies which are today not sustainable yet. Let's say like a steel company which is showing a strong transition plan, but where the fund manager shows also a very credible strategy how the manager uses its power as an investor to also make sure that the company reaches this goal. So a strong stewardship company, while coal is excluded from the portfolio. So that would be an example for an investor with a value objective and at the same time an impact objective, and an investor who would be willing to invest in today non-sustainable companies, but which become sustainable in future. While there might be also another profile who is a pure impact-oriented investor who want only to invest in sustainable companies today. And this would be then an investor who probably could be interested in primary market products, such as private equity or venture capital funds, which would allow this investor to invest in green startups which lack capital to grow or which lack finance and would need to have concessional finance, meaning better market conditions than conventional products to enable to grow. So that would be an example for such an investor. If you're interested about this topic, to close my advertisement activities for today for our other work, we worked also the last months on a, I think, pretty cool new project, which is a impact investing podcast. We, together with other speakers, we developed a series of 8 episodes, which are supposed to give you kind of the journey through from knowing nothing about impact investing to how to act as an impact-oriented investor. This will be launched also at the beginning of October. That might be also interesting if you are interested in this impact investing topic in particular. So I see that we are already a little bit over time, but we also started later. So I hope that's fine. These are all the questions I see in the chat. So thank you for listening, for your questions. again, if you want to know more, if you want to engage into a discussion, if you are interested in our data, we are also happy to share. Let us know, and yeah, hope to hear soon from you. Bye.